Okay.
Nayyar, send it on my WhatsApp.
Sir, I have sent it to you on WhatsApp also.
Okay. Can you please call that to the panelist?
Yeah. I called Dr. Khalid Abdullah.
Okay.
He is joining.
Okay, that's it.
In the connection.
So what is the idea? What your group is likely to talk about?
We will be mainly talking about the comeback strategy.
That's great. That is what we are looking at. In fact, the whole humanity is looking for that.
Exactly.
I'm sure that it is going to be a very pragmatic decision.
Hopefully, inshallah. We will try our level best.
We are still in time. We decided to start at 3:30. It is 3:20 only.
Exactly.
So we are ahead of time almost.
Yeah, we are. So they will be joining. They are in contact all the time. So
Sure.
Inshallah. And there are participants as well, you know.
Yeah, of course. Attendees have started joining.
Yeah, mashallah. And they are sending messages as well. Good, nice to see. Yeah, I think Dr. Tham.
Assalamu alaikum, Khaled.
Welcome.
No, this is,
Can you hear me?
This is Dr. Thamer. This is Dr. Thamer Bazim.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. But the name displayed is Khaled. I don't know how. Yeah, yeah. No, it's fine. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Thamir.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. How
How
are
are
you,
you,
Professor
brother?
Imran? How are you
Good to
doing?
see you after such a long gap.
Thank you so much. Thank you. كيف حالك؟ How are you, Dr. Zaid?
Alhamdulillah. Nice to
Alhamdulillah.
see you. Nice to
Alhamdulillah,
see you.
mashallah, mashallah. Good to see you guys.
Yes, after a
Allah
long, long,
accept our deeds in Ramadan, inshallah, and forgive all of our sins.
inshallah. Ameen, summa ameen. Yeah.
It's an absolute blessing in disguise, I'll say. Meeting friends in an hour of crisis, unfortunately, but it's still, I mean, somehow we are meeting. That's great.
Alhamdulillah,
So
alhamdulillah.
everybody is fine, Dr. Thamir?
Yeah, we are okay. Yeah, we are staying home,
Okay. That's the
trying to
rightest
enjoy.
strategy, I'm sure. As far as possible, you must do it.
Inshallah, inshallah.
So kids must be enjoying your company. Huh?
Yeah, especially I have a new daughter. She's 3 months now,
That's very true.
and I think she's the happiest baby in the world because enjoying that her parents and brothers always are
Alhamdulillah.
4x7. Busy.
That's very true.
We are busy, but busy beside her.
Of course. So,
Actually, I've got a perfect, let's say, engagement, during this coronavirus. And she is lucky that her parents are all the time around her.
Yes, yes, yes.
that's
Maybe,
very true.
yeah, maybe by force, but still.
She's the lucky one now.
Yeah, mashallah, tabarakallah. May Allah bless her.
Ameen ya Rabbi.
But it is really nice to see you after a long, long time, Tamir, mashallah,
In a
tabarakallah.
while, yes. I wanted to visit Qasim, but here stuff getting busier all the times.
Yeah, for sure. No, we'll meet up, inshallah, sometime soon when the coronavirus finishes, either in Jeddah or in Qasim, hopefully.
Maybe in Mecca, near to Haram.
I hope so. I wish, Allah, the situation, is not that favorable right now. I wish, I hope.
We miss Haram, ya Allah, بس عاد alhamdulillah.
What is somehow situation in Saudi? Have you started relaxing lockdown or something?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay.
Especially in the western region where I live, Mecca, Jeddah, things are getting harder here because the numbers of the cases always is more.
That's very true. In case of India, the number is much, much higher, pretty higher. And it is exceeding like anything.
How many now? How many patients you have?
We have roughly around 45,000 plus by now.
Compared to the population of India, it's fine. We have over 27,000 now. And
I have seen it. Yeah. So, but it's really very unfortunate, and let us hope that Allah help us all, the whole of humanity.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
Professor, are you in? Please. Because maybe when you joined, you said only audio, not video. So maybe you can rejoin. Rejoin. Yes, please. Dr. Khalid Abdullah is about to join. He joined, but he was on.
I will just check out with Nayar. Nayar? Nayar? Nayar, I think Dr. Khalid he is not getting the video connection. There is some problem. Is he joining as attendee or something? Just check out. But he's not getting the video connect. Of course, I mean, he's getting the voice. We have requested him to join once again. To log out and join again. Just check it, please. This boy with us, Mr. Nayyar, is a new faculty with the department, and technically he is very savvy.
MashaAllah.
He's very techno savvy and very nice boy, very hard work.
That's good.
So, of course, there is almost a generation gap. In fact, the newer generation is much ahead of us.
I think you are updated enough to cooperate with the new generations.
That's very true. I have a link in between young boys like Zaid
Yeah.
and many of his kind. His classmate, Dr. Asya Chaudhary, is with us. Oh, Dr. Khalid. Assalamu alaikum.
I see, yeah.
Welcome to the panel, and we had been waiting for you very eagerly. Dr. Khalid, your microphone is off. Please switch it on. Yeah.
Okay, now I said hello, and I was secretly listening to you. That was right from the beginning.
So nice of you. So nice of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and nice meeting you all.
Okay.
Can I take just one more minute? Let me check out with the chairman of my department, please, for a while.
Yeah.
You mean Prof. Nawab?
Yeah.
So, mashallah, you remember his name? You saw him in the video, I guess.
I saw him, and I have virtual assistant around me here. I have my note.
That's good. That's good. How are you doing, Professor Khalid? Nice to see you after a long time.
I think this is the best way, Zaid, for the time being.
For sure, seriously. And I think, we should engage on, socialize on Zoom now, to be honest.
Exactly, yes.
Dr. Nasser will not join us?
I think he may not join because he sent me a message right now. He said that I think he got a meeting with the president all of a sudden.
President of the university.
Yep. So somehow he said, actually he told me that I will commit only on the condition that if I don't get any emergency meeting, then only I will join, because we are through the exams and everything, So I said, okay, let us see.
We'll just take a minute. I'm sorry I'm keeping you waiting.
No, okay.
Okay. Just I'll be getting the response and we'll start.
Dr. Khalid Abdullah, how is your life these days going on?
Well, it couldn't be better. As I told you, nothing is affected. My activities are to the minimum usually. I'm an old man, not like you, I wasn't going
Dr.
around.
Khalid, I have heard so much about you from Zaid that I was longing to see you. It's a
You
pleasure
mean-
for me.
You mean they heard the bad stories or good stories?
Longing to see you, of course. I mean, it goes the good stories.
Because we have noticed stories between us.
Perhaps the bad parts we get when we meet.
Seriously.
I'm as well, pleased to meet a lot of you,
Same here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
I think time is passing, so let us begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Sure.
At the outset, that on behalf of the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Aligarh Muslim University, I welcome all the panelists. I'm really thankful from the core of my heart that all of three of you have taken time out. I'm even thankful to Dr. Nasser for his very kind cooperation and support to organize this webinar, because perhaps had there been lack of his consent, possibly we would not have pushed ahead. Anyway, see, I was just discussing with Dr. Zad that since he joined in the first place, that you people, the panel will be discussing about the comeback strategies. So, and this is what actually we are looking at. The whole of the humanity, in fact, is staring in vain almost right now, and we have to strategize because the type of crisis that is unfolding is almost unprecedented. Even the IMF has estimated that there will be a job fall and there will be a GDP fall to the extent of 2%, which will be which will be a loss of around 1 trillion economy across the world. So the revival would be somewhat very difficult. We have to really understand that it is not only the ailment with COVID-19, but more so the unfolding economic drama and of course the political and social consequences because of that are likely to be, really need to be addressed, need to be planned, need to be deliberated so that because I strongly feel that the world community has to respond in a very joint way. And I would refer to one of the quotes of Oxfam, one of the research agencies, which has estimated that there is a requirement of around $250 trillion to keep the developing and the marginalized communities afloat. So it is such a challenge before the humanity. But possibly we may see a bigger depression than that of 1930s. So anyway, I'm sure that given the wisdom from all three of you, and there will be more panel discussions across the world in the forthcoming days, we would be able to call out at least a few strategies that would be we should be able to contribute towards the humanity and for the development and of the economy. I would request the panelists to please, if we can map out where we are and what we are going to do, I would welcome.
Who's gonna start?
Sure, sir.
Okay.
I think we should start with the oldest.
Okay. Maybe
Zaid is the oldest.
instead of that, let me take if you allow me, the panelists allow me, I will take the opportunity to take the assessment of the current scenario, and then we can proceed with what exactly we need to do or the strategies that we need to follow. Dr. Khalid, can you allow me to go ahead, please? Shall I? Okay, please. I was reading through the reports of various agencies. So, that the biggest problem is that more than half of the world workforce, they are going to be jobless, totally jobless, or they will be substantially losing their income. Substantially, out of 3.3 billion workforce across the globe, more than half of them will be losing job. And the worst part is that 2 billion they are employed in informal sector, which is a large number, and they are the really affected people. So we need to think about them. Not only this, the current status of the affected people across the globe is, it is with all these lockdown and all these efforts, it is increasing continuously. More than 3.5 million people across the globe have been affected, and it is continuously increasing. When despite the fact the entire world is at lockdown for the last 2 months, and the death is around, more than 250,000 people have died. So the things are very serious on the front of health, on the front of economy, on the front of socialization. So given, and it is worth mentioning here that I would like to bring the attention of the panelists and to all the participants, the death rate, we can't take it light. The death rate in some of the worst affected countries like UK, it is around 15%. It is huge. So we can't take it light also. Now, the dilemma across the globe, from individual to the policymakers, to the government, to the academicians, is what exactly to do. Whether we focus on the economy or we focus on the life, what to save. And there is no clear answer coming. Just last point to mention here. Some of the researchers, from the Western countries like Harvard Public Health School and all, University of Minnesota, they are saying that it is going to continue for 2 years, 2 long years. So we can't shut down, we can't close the economy. We have to open up, and after 2 months, we need to start the economy again so that we can at least feed the people. This is the situation across the globe. So in this background, we will be talking about the comeback strategy, inshallah. Over to the panelists, please. Maybe Professor Imran, your mic is off. Can you please open it up?
I'm saying you are very correct in analyzing the economic situation across the world. I mean, it's really unprecedented. And we have to really quickly converge the strategies and evolve the strategies to work out something.
And we have to get into the situation where we have to now, as the things are coming up, we have to live up with COVID, with the virus. So the whole lot of things need to be structured. Maybe Dr. Thamer, you can
Hi.
please.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. First of all, thank you to the University of Aligra for inviting me to this panel discussion. Thanks to to Professor Tariq, the Vice Chancellor, and also big thanks to Professor Imran, the Dean of the Business School there, and to my previous boss, Dr. Zaid Ansari, for this invitation, and I'll be happy to be with Dr. Khalid Abdullah in this panel discussion. It's so glad for me being with you, and inshallah I will be able to provide something new to the audience and to the attendees. In terms of, I will go straight to the comeback strategy, which is our main subject here.
Perfect.
Talking about comeback, we can take it from 3 levels. A comeback strategy for us as individuals, okay? And we have a comeback for organizations, either small businesses, either big businesses, or either governmental entities. And the third level, which is the biggest, is a strategy for governments and for countries. So we have 3 levels of comeback. We need to take each one of them maybe with a deeper analysis to know the most important requirements for each element of those level of comeback. However, there are common seen between the 3 of them. Because I'm a consumer behaviorist, I'd love to talk about individuals normally or usually in my lectures and also in my talks. In terms of us as individuals, the first and most maybe important learning from this pandemic is we don't need to be naive to consumers, too much consumers after this situation. What I mean by that, our understanding to the economy should be better, okay, as individuals. Our understanding of our country's economy should be much better. Our understanding of the business cycle, the way we save from our income, the way we spend from our income should be different. That's what I recommend any individual when talking about a comeback strategy. So understand the world in a better way, understand yourself as consumer, as part of this community, part of your community, much better. And this is the biggest learning for you. For companies, unfortunately, most of our companies, we do have blueprints, okay? We have heaps of plans, strategic planning. We have goals. We have maybe KPIs, but we only write them and put them on the drop. We don't actually use them. We normally fill the gap of having a crisis strategy just to be part of our strategy. But when we have a real crisis, we don't get back to that strategy. Okay. So our duty now as companies is to get back to that written crisis strategy and see the gap between the actual happening and what we have written.
True.
And assist ourselves as companies whether did we write our strategy at the beginning from good predictive analysis or no. That's number one. Okay, after the crisis, this strategy will be valid or it's not valid anymore. Okay, to start after the crisis, can we rely on the strategy we wrote and agree as boards or as CEO or as whatever again or not? From companies' perspective, from countries' perspective, I can't talk about each countries around the world because I heard about them only from news. But what I see here in Saudi Arabia, alhamdulillah, our country, our government, they did well in terms of assessing the situation far before most of the countries around the world. From my position as head of media and corporate communication in the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah, alhamdulillah, we made a very good and ambitious and also courageous decision by stopping the Umrah from 27th of February, where at that time it wasn't still a pandemic.
Exactly.
Publicly announced. And alhamdulillah, we did some calculation saying that if we didn't stop the Umrah at that time, and it was Rajab, you know, Rajab is a heavy month of Mu'tamirin coming to Mecca and Medina, because it's the time where the Prophet went to the sky to get to meet Allah. If we didn't do that and only 1% of our pilgrims get infected, the number of the infected cases would be 10 times more the number we see now in Saudi Arabia. And imagine that all of those people who get infected in Saudi Arabia will get back to their countries and Mecca will be a source, you know?
Exactly.
Of the issue.
Javier, can I just ask one thing here?
Yes, please.
As a Muslim, this decision of yours since you are coming from the ministry itself, if your ministry allows, see, I really appreciate the action of Saudi government like anything. I mean, it's absolutely marvelous. But as an individual, as a Muslim, when the decision was taken, it was a shock. It was a lifetime shock. So I really appreciate and how you could muster so much courage to take this decision. It was such a good decision. I must appreciate, and I think now the whole world is appreciating. True. But it would have required a lot of courage at that time when you have taken this decision.
Alhamdulillah, yes, this is when we think about it at that time. I remember what should we say to the world? That was a question when we had the decision. And alhamdulillah, the decision was blessed by the custodian of the two holy mosques, the king and the crown prince. They blessed that decision, and the question was to me, to the world, should I say we close it and that's it? It's our responsibility and it's our duty, or should I provide some reasons? And we had some debates at that time. And because it wasn't a pandemic yet, we decided just to say we closed it to protect Al-Haramain, Masjid Al-Haram and Masjid Al-Nabawi from this new, we don't know about sickness, and we'll see, inshallah, this closing or this closure will be only for a time being. It will not be closed, closed for good. We only announced that like that. We didn't say anything more. We didn't dig deeper in talking to the people. We just told them that we did that because of the Muslims, because of the Masjid Al-Haram and Masjid Al-Nabawi, and that's it. And alhamdulillah, yes, from the media, we had some backlash, honestly speaking. Yes, Saudi Arabia choked 1 billion Muslims around the world by closing Mecca and Medina in front of them, and some of the media talk it in a negative way, but we didn't care about what they said. Alhamdulillah, the Muslims around the world, they valued what we did. And you know, we are assessing this decision in a daily basis since then. We never just and stop. We assess it.
It was a very timely decision,
every day.
and it was indeed a very timely decision. And
you know, I'll tell you some hidden stories from that. Okay, when we closed them, we had inside Saudi Arabia 450,000 Muslims who already arrived and they wanted to continue their Umrah. Okay, we can't just call them to get back to their countries without continuing their Umrah, because most of them, they had their life saving to come. Okay. We also had 260,000 people already had visas and they are ready to come. And some of them were in the airports at that time, preparing their tickets to come to visit Mecca and Medina. So we had also a crisis strategy for them. For the people who used to be here at that time in Saudi Arabia, we divided them into two groups. Group number one, the people who are already made their Umrah. They've already made their Umrah. They are just enjoying their time there, going to Al-Haram, pray, come back, and that's it. For those people, we said you have to stay in the hotel until we finish your paperwork and we finish your ticketing, and you need to come back to your country because it's much safer for you. Okay? For the others who didn't continue their Umrahs at that time, we had a plan, what I called it a crowd management plan, to take them on small groups, 200 people per group, assessing the social distances between them, and take them after Isha, when the Haram is closed, after Isha at night, to Al-Haram Al-Nabawi, Al-Haram Al-Makki, to complete their Umrah, do the Tawaf, do the Sa'i, and then come back to their hotel. Alhamdulillah, now, it's been now 2 months since 27th of February. All 450,000 people, they are in their countries safe, alhamdulillah.
Dr. Thamer, this is a very vital issue, I believe, especially Muslims from across the world. So what is your comeback strategy for reopening the Makkah and Medina, inshallah, very soon? What is the comeback plan of the ministry and other people?
In terms of comeback strategy, for Al-Haram, Makkah and Medina, we can open it any day when the situation is better.
inshallah.
We will have problem, okay, with the service providers. Why? Because all of the hotels are shut down now. All of the ground services providers are shut down now. And some of them, they've already get rid of their employees. So you can't tell them to come back and reoperate in 100% capacity in one day. So recovery will take a bit of time. That's why Ministry of Hajj, for example, or other ministries like the Ministry of Economy and Planning, they've provided some initiatives to help those businesses maintaining during the shutdown and the lockdown timing, so we can make sure that after the pandemic finish, inshallah soon, they can come back quicker than they won't be able to come back in 100% in one day, but
Exactly.
reduce the time of the recovery afterward.
Mm,
The government pays 60% of the salaries of the employees. That can make you
perfect.
survive at least. And we give them some other initiatives, like we give them some workshops in how to maintain the businesses, workshops on the financial modeling in the crisis. And also we give them an opportunity to to apply for reducing their capitals.
Perfect. Now,
Yes.
Dr. Thamer, Dr. Thamer, if you allow me, I will just take a chance here. I always appreciate Dr. Khalid speaking in the last. From my experience, wherever I'm sitting, I keep him waiting, waiting, waiting. This is
Yes, I was looking at him,
so,
trying to say,
so,
please say
so
something.
what I will tell here is maybe let me just give a very brief about Professor Khalid.
Yes,
Professor Khalid is basically a British national, and he is associated with Essex University there, mashallah.
mashallah.
And he has many PhDs, in law, and I don't remember. He told me 2, 3 PhDs.
Mashallah,
So
tabarakallah.
I'm sure that he will be enlightened from his view of, especially focusing on the comeback strategy. Maybe at the global level or whatever he wants to suggest. Let us hear from Professor Khalid, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tamer. That's, very enlightening, conversation. So at least we know now, where Saudi Arabia is heading, in that perspective.
Perfect.
And it is an honor to me to join you, for this, webinar. And I thank everybody who contributed to this and made it, available. The only thing I want to comment on, is that everybody is looking forward to the comeback, process. But always we have been warned, by health scientists and the politicians around the world that this is not a quick comeback and it will never be the same as before. So I took this warning and I made my departure point in my discussion. So if we wanted now to come back, as Dr. Tamer expressed, slowly and gradually and with certain percentages, meanwhile we have other issues, to deal with, maybe psychologically, maybe politically, maybe legally. Okay, so we have many other perspectives, to look into. The first thing I want, to remind people, because again, Professor Zaid mentioned about some statistics and the gloomy situation, how many are losing their jobs and how work is affecting economy. And then where are we now, from this perspective as well? Because people are looking for work as a means of living. You don't work, you don't live. As
True.
simple. So my first point then is about the meaning of work. That's the first thing we have to change, our perspective on. So we used to see, and Dr. Tamer referred to this through the idea of consumerism, that people are working for other purposes other than consumerism. And we have many other issues making them, thinking of work as something, sacred. It is beyond even the reach, of some individuals. So we call work in London, for example, when I see people running in the underground, trying to catch the train, we call this as, rat race. It's exactly like rats racing for something, you see. At the end of the day, they come back, they are doing exactly the same movement, same motion. So in this situation, I was always thinking, what's the meaning of work for those people, In some countries, the meaning of work is to pay bills, as simple as that. In other countries, work is, for enjoyment. And in a third category, work used to be, as something, to increase your expectations, to increase your goals and achievement, and maybe you don't need them. It is something created by the media imagery. It is something created in our culture, a step after another. So if I wanted to live in a house and I pay what's enough for the bills, and then what's enough for me to consume, as Dr. Tamer said, I need to give up a lot of things, in life in order to minimize my work. And that's what Dr. Zaid referred to. Professor Zaid said, we are looking for less, for example, job availability on the market. This means we have to reduce our expectations.
True.
I don't see a problem at all coping with life after the coronavirus, yes, and with the comeback.
Very
If
good.
I change, if I change the meaning of work, especially in the mentality of the individuals who are really now are far away from the real meaning of work. Why do I need to work? That's the big question. Okay. If you look at us now, we are not working the traditional way. Everybody is sitting at home. If you look at the streets, they are clean, they are empty, they are, for me, I see them beautiful. Okay, so what was happening then during that work period before the corona? The second notion I noticed that everybody is not feeling comfortable with is the idea of isolation. Where does this, non-comfortability is coming from? As human beings, we are again aspiring for bigger and bigger and bigger space. And we want to think of the physical space. Look at us now. Where are we now? We are in something called virtual space. Our ancestors never imagined. Here we are using it, to work through. What about your house? Why did you need that big space? What about the planning of the cities, which we spend, all our money and work all our life, okay? And then just to make it, the biggest, the tallest, the widest, what's this idea coming from? Where is it coming from in the first thing? So the notion of space now is very important to feel comfortable with our life after the corona pandemic. Why? Because we are taking now not only smaller space, it's limited space. And the distance is killed. And the time now is getting longer. And that's why people all the time, they are thinking, now I have time, to get together, with the family, this and that. Okay, if you exploit that, concept, then you might be feeling better. So reflecting that on work industry, like universities, like other agencies, like other work organizations, people are, for me, in my own perspective, people are still coping well with the notion of work within a space called, virtual space. Except for the other things which needs, delivery, which needs attendance, in person, other needs like the medical, like the food, like, farming, these things, okay, we cannot do it in the virtual space. So I have to remind people, historically, we expanded our space, which is now we are living in, on the accounts of farming. So people stopped farming, stopped agriculture, stopped everything, thinking that this is the way forward. So what we had, in the past, a trauma in our perspective about work and about space. Now, maybe the pandemic is, amending that vision and reminding us we have not been there. Our life wasn't always in cramped, cities like London, Paris, Washington, and New York.
So you mean to say, Professor, maybe the whole lifestyle, the whole structure may come to a change.
I can see it now.
Perfect.
I can see it, and people wouldn't feel even comfortable after that. But it is a change. Like one of the perspectives affecting, because the notion of work and the notion of space are connected directly to something called state sovereignty. Now look at us in Saudi Arabia, in Britain, in United States, India, wherever we are. Who is interfering now and making us isolated? one agency. We call it, one organization. We call it the state. Now, if we change the meaning of the state or the sovereignty of the state in the future, it would be for traditionalists, it would be a disaster for traditionalists. Now, if you look at the role of the state in all of this, again, it is changing from one physical space to virtual space. So we have now the electronic, army, we have the electronic policing, we have all of that working, and they are warning us already that, the crime rate is rising now on the virtual space. Why? Because everybody now on that space. But do we have enough to police that space? This is the problem. So while the government is busy doing something else, they were building armies, they were building police force, but they couldn't, monitor and they couldn't, control fully the virtual space. And that's a disaster coming. That's, very fearful. So now some countries started, started in the beginning, they started secretly. Now they are doing it openly. So the whole police force now is dedicated for the virtual space. So this
Dr. Khalid, we are having a lot of questions, and one of them is, can we talk a little about the marginalized group? Because see, the people dealing with the virtual section, virtual space, and the higher end people is one thing. What about the marginalized group, which I believe is the hardest hit section of the segment of the society?
This is part of the discussion I intended, to leave till last, but because you asked, already.
Because many questions are popping up.
Yeah, this comes exactly under, there was the theme I was always talking in my publications about, digital divide, because I'm, from electronic background. And then I wanted all the time to alert the Westerners who are always thinking that the world is one, the world is globalized, the world is, all connected. This is a false idea, because when you come to the marginalized, group, I call them the non-digitalized. Okay, and I mean by this, we have so many factors affecting the digitalization, of some states and some groups, which you are calling, marginalized. So they will be left out, either because they are, what I call them the relics of the older generation, or the needy people who are not affording the economic power in order, to be digitalized. So therefore, we say some countries now, I take the United States as in the beginning, Bill Clinton, when he was a president, he was alerted to this idea, we call it digital divide, okay, between groups. And he promised the American people and the world at the time that, telecommunication and the internet would be provided free for all the world. Now, since the time, I'm talking about the 2000, now we are 2020. It's very shameful that, 20 years passed and, greedy telecommunication companies are still making money and causing people to be marginalized. So the first accused, again, is, profitability. And the second accused is, state policies. Nobody is doing anything about that because they are accumulating tax, they are making profit, or they are participating in the process, of selling that, service. So in order, the third group, which is marginalized as well, other than the poor, other than the needy, as I said, and other than old, generation, we need people, to communicate properly about this technology to those marginalized people, to train them, to make the affordability. Give you an example about UK now, while we are talking, what's happening there. They realize that they are moving, over the virtual space now. Then they discovered that we have a lot of marginalized groups. So they started through the workplaces to distribute, and universities, laptops free, and computers, and telecommunication package to those, people who are employed, by these organizations, or who are students, or who are belonging to the organization in one way or another.
Oh.
So even UK was very late in recognizing that, the digital world is not one cohesive and, one cohort. And they started, working on this. The other thing, because we talked about, being virtual, I have to alert people to something very important now. And this is post-corona thing. With the pretext of, isolation and getting information, medical information or genetic information about people, a lot of creepy companies now started, buying and digging into what we call the big data of that, cohort of people. Now, this would compromise what we call, personal privacy in one way. And second, it is again compromising everything called, whether sovereignty of the law or the legal perspective, in any country. So under this pretext now, everybody is breaking the law and everybody is giving, away their liberties. And everybody, is thinking that, oh, the coronavirus is more important now. We have to find, a cure. We have to find, vaccine, blah, blah, blah. So they started collecting data, interfering in personal lives, willy-nilly, so without asking people permissions and so on. I'm not, referring to people who are really hardworking, on this issue. No, I'm referring to some gangs, I call them, and they are business, companies, marketing companies. They are digging into the data now, and they are sending very significant information about those people, whether the people, who were victims to the coronavirus, or their families, or their neighborhood. And now people say, for example, this is a good application. If you look at the app in Korea, in China, in London now, they tell you whether your neighbor or the people around your area has got, coronavirus or not, under the pretext that we are trying to protect the community. But then this information now proved to be used, for other purposes now in UK and, United States. So therefore we say here, if we are looking into these issues, immediately we would say that the post-corona, that's why, some politicians immediately announced that the post-corona world will never be ever the same before, corona world. So I stop with this because I guess, other people need to talk and have questions and so on. Thank you.
Maybe if Professor Imran and other panelists suggest, because there are some questions that I see, one of the participants is asking. Yes, sir.
He was basically, there is a question to Dr. Khalid only, that will this ballooning of digital marketing is likely to explode in near future after in the post-COVID, in the post-COVID scenario, the digital marketing balloon, which is almost in formation.
Well, definitely yes. We can see now the impact. Everybody is using, marketing, online, and the digital, digitalization of marketing. We have seen it already right from the beginning now, zooming up. I don't know whether you have seen some statistics now, how much, digital marketing is increasing now in the world. Even in countries they never thought of digital marketing, they are already on the map.
True.
There is another point asked from Dr. Tamer to Dr. Tamer.
Yes, please.
There is a question that what is your observation, the impact on consumers in the market during this scenario, the present scenario?
Okay, before I
what is the
answer
likely behavioral change in the consumers in the post-COVID scenario?
Before I answer this question, let me just take the opportunity to thank Dr. Khalid Abdullah for the inspirational talk he just made. I learned a lot from what he said. So thank you, Dr. Khalid. And he reminds me of an English quote called success demands singleness of purposes. So we have to get back to the purposes of work. And, the big trend in strategy now is the question why. So start with why. Everything start with why. Maybe we can say to the people, when you come back, or when you write your comeback strategy, start with why. Why should I come back? Before I can talk about how to come back and where to come back and when to come back. In terms of the consumer behavior in the kingdom, if I can take about, now the digital retailing raised from only, it was around 9%, and now it's getting into 32%.
My God.
And expected to be 50% in 2021. And I think this dramatic in the usage of digital retailing is because of the lockdown and the coronavirus, and also the improvement in the logistics companies. Okay. Yes, we have lots of people complaining about the logistic companies because of the late in deliveries and the wrongness in delivering the product paid for. But companies are learning from that, and they will improve the services, and that will lead to better digital retailing and better logistics in the future. Other thing in terms of digital marketing, you know, we had, maybe Dr. Zayed knows that more than me, but word of mouth is the most effective promotional activity we can have, because we trust our communities, we trust the people we always with. We have shared interests, we have even shared taboos. We talk about our future, we talk about our consumption always together. These living room talks or friend gathering talks moved now, it moved before to the digital worlds. And now it moved more and more towards the digital, because people are sharing their experience during the lockdown and during the pandemic via the digital communities they are part of. So the marketing companies, and especially the digital marketing companies, are taking the opportunities, trying to analyze and predict the future behavior of from tracking their behavior in the digital that's my thought about the future of consumers.
I see one question here, sir, Professor Imran. It says that, from Firasat Zaidi, it says, I think it is to all of us, the panelists, what about daily wages? Downtrodden people or majority of people in the developing third world countries, do they have the option to change the perspective of looking at the way work is to be considered? If yes, how can they do it? No, this is a question from one of the participant here.
Actually, I raised it earlier as addressing as marginalized groups.
Exactly.
So that is there.
Professor Khalid, do you think they are going to change their definition of the work in future, because they are the most hard hit, and they are not in a position to. I don't know. Maybe if you want to deliberate, say a few things on that.
This is a very interesting question, and just to give you an idea that this thing called the pattern of work, we have been undergoing a change in the pattern of work now for decades.
True.
And I don't know whether you have heard recently in Europe, and specifically in the United Kingdom, Britain, they were talking about zero contracts and freelancing, and they were talking about universities doing the work online, and they were talking about sacking lecturers. Already they are in the process. So the change was already undergoing before the pandemic, and maybe the pandemic speeded up and gave legitimation and gave for example excuse for organizations now to let people work in different type of contract. Unfortunately, what I want to say now, the government all the governments, the law, and other, agencies are not into the process of coping with the quick change of the meaning of work, the meaning of contracting, and so on. And that's why big organizations are getting away very easily with their, what I call conspiracies against workers and the type of work. Only the few lucky ones, if you can take your case to the Supreme Court, whether it was the United States, United Kingdom, or Europe, you could have success. But how many of them? If you measure, for example, and calculate how many of them, were changed, have changed the basis of their contract, and how many cases were allowed in the court of law, you will be shocked. So it means now the state is not doing their role properly in the perspective of change of work and the meaning of work. And we are already seeing now that people, even individuals, started to favor working from far, favor working from home, favor working in isolated spaces. The other thing where people were thinking that the change of work pattern is important is the change from what we call individualism culture to collectivism culture. We don't want to see the organization now as a group of individuals who are contributing to its success. No, I want to see the organization as one, as collective. Now the individuals are being, killed off. We don't want to show their efforts in order not to allow their movement from one organization to another. So collectivism and individualism. If we look now into the culture of dealing into the culture of the states who are dealing with the pandemic now, this factor was very important. If I look at Saudi Arabia, which is described not by me only or previous scholars as a collectivist culture, so it means when people think, they think together for the sake and in favor of everybody, and they can be led by a leader who says yes, no, and everybody obeys. And that was very good in a pandemic time. But if I look back to Europe, Italy, France, Britain today, they had a disaster when they tried to deal with the pandemic. Why? Exactly. The Western perspective of individualism, my liberty is more important, civil liberties are being threatened, blah, blah, blah. Now we see what's happening in there. So therefore I say that was a big difference. People didn't pay attention. Why some policies are passing through easily and smoothly in some countries, and why the rest are not passing as easy as that. If you look at the United States, they are already fighting state against another. If you look at, for example, Korea, China, and other countries, they dealt more properly with the pandemic. And this is back again due to the sense of collectivism and individualism. So the work organization now is moving down this direction. So they don't want now, although the Westerners, encouraged what we call individualism in the beginning of the 19th century, and maybe, Dr. Tamer and Professor Zaid, they know more through, teaching about, consumerism and teaching about, marketing, and they wanted, the profits out of the whole perspective of individualism. But now I think, it's the time to recognize that we are paying dearly for that kind, of perspective. Look carefully now, in order to stop a pandemic like this, and in order to have a smooth comeback, I tell you, no country in the world can do it on their own. No one.
Perfect. Wonderful. This
Very
is
true. Very
Yes,
true.
individually we cannot do it. Still, we have to be within the collectivist, effort.
wonderful.
Dr. Khalid, can you make some observation on one industry which is, I believe, is the hardest hit, that is tourism and travel? How do you see in the immediate, post-COVID scenario, how it is likely to reflect upon tourism and travel industry, which I believe is the hardest hit. I mean, the word has come to a zero.
Tourism and travel industry, unfortunately, they have double swords against them. It's not only the pandemic and the fear of traveling. No, it's the individual himself or herself. I'm one of them now. Look at me now. I'm living in Saudi Arabia. So Britain and the British Embassy corresponded with us, and they said, whoever wants to come back, to UK, and I have other American, fellows and Canadian and the rest. We have planes ready and flights are ready, to go back to London. I tell you, honestly, not a single one proposed to return. Not a single one. For many purposes. One of them, for me, for example, even on a trip like 1 or 2 months to spend the holiday and come back into Saudi Arabia, I wouldn't do it. Is it me in person now? I say yes. It has nothing to do with but it is inside me that I do not trust. I do not trust the means of transport. I do not trust the airports. I do not trust that everybody is doing exactly the same. So therefore, what's the point of traveling? Why? Again, this is another thing. We are in a process of changing the meaning of tourism. It's not the meaning of work, tourism. If you don't have the means, if you don't have the luxury and the extra spending power, why to go on tourism? And where to? What if you are compounded and impounded, in some other country and you cannot come back? What do you do?
So, and actually, it is happening right now. Lots of people are stuck abroad in the.
We already seen that, you see.
Yes,
So
exactly.
why to repeat the process? So every sensible person now sitting somewhere, they would think, is that the time for tourism? Of course, it's not. So they will
Maybe
longer than other industries.
exactly. Maybe it will take long time to return back to the back position.
Yes.
Now, if allowed, I want to say a few lines, few things as a comeback strategy in Indian perspective, a developing country mostly, because I was reading through the data, actually that is very scary. I was seeing in India there are 460 million people, workforce is there, and out of that 415 million they are in informal sector again. And now the problem is, and the other nature of Indian economy, countries like India, what I see is most of the laborers, they are migrant to other cities. Now after the COVID-19, they are returning back to their villages, to their towns for nothing. They don't have anything to do. Now in this scenario, what I suggest as a comeback strategy in general is that, my point of view is that the government across the globe, they should, wherever this point is applicable, I'm talking at the ground level now, they should assess their food capacity in the first place. How much food security do they have? Number one. Number two is they should make sure that each and every individual of their country, they are supplied with food, and for that they need a strong supply chain management to reach from the government to the individuals living in the remotest of the places, because they are the hardest hit. Then as a third step for the comeback strategy in general for across the globe, we individuals, academics, policymakers, governments, we should immediately start doing researches on how to encourage the entrepreneurship, self-employment. This is very important as of now, because this is the place, as you said, Professor Khalid said, that we need to redefine our work. And not only work, what I feel is now I as an individual, I need to redefine my standard of living also, post COVID. We have to.
I have a saying this on what you've said, Dr. Zaid. Maybe the entrepreneurial and self-employing culture used to be hard to be adopted by the poor individuals, if we can say that word, because they were looking for the easiest way to find their food, to find their daily life. They have families to feed. I think after the pandemic or from now, most of the individuals, they are thinking, currently, they are thinking about why they have this question. Why should I be relying on being paid by someone else?
Exactly.
This will improve the possibility for getting into the entrepreneurial mindset, if I can say it, or being self-employed. So they will try to find ways to give themselves the free of having their own income rather than being relied on someone else.
And you know, this will be the right
Government,
this
yeah,
will
if the
this
sorry,
is the right time where the government can interfere, you know.
yes, if the government wants to emphasize into helping small businesses, helping individual self-employed businesses, I think this is the right time to set up some plans for that, to start talking about this with people in remote areas, even here in Saudi Arabia. I remember like maybe more than 10 years ago, they've been thinking about, okay, we have people, once they finish their high school or once they finish their high school, they try to migrate from their villages or first from small cities or small towns to Jeddah or Riyadh or Dammam.
Yeah.
So can we make them staying more in their cities, because Jeddah, Riyadh, Dammam are inflated with too many people now. So they started building universities in remote areas. So it jumped from only seven public universities in Saudi Arabia to around 28 now, beside the private universities. That made people stay in their cities, small towns, and the villages. However, they found out that once they finish universities, they started to come again to Riyadh or Jeddah to find jobs, because it's the easiest way. I am graduated, I'm qualified, I can easily find a company in Riyadh, a company in Jeddah, or a government sector to employ me and give me a monthly salary that will maintain my living expense, but will not take me higher and higher.
But now the people they are forced to stay back in their own town, villages,
Yes,
and they have to
yes,
take up a self-employment, you know. And this
yes.
is the right
That's
opportunity
exactly what we need to
where
think
the
about.
government can help them by providing interest-free loans, maybe, you know, interest-free loans, and they can give them tax haven for let's say 3 to 4 years. They can start up, encourage them by participating in the profit sharing with them, you know. So
Financial institutions like banks or investment banks or the commercial banks, they would have opportunities here, have some social contribution beside being partners with some of those small individuals who are looking to be self-employed in the near future.
yes.
So I don't see that this issue will take us to better, to more unemployment rate. If we allow ourselves to be a bit courage and talk about self-employment, I think we will have less employment rate, inshallah, in the near future.
That's a very good idea. Since we are almost running short of time, I would like to ask just last one question. How do you see the position of expatriates in Saudi Arabia?
This is a hard question.
Because I think all of us are looking at this.
If we continue, we are a developing country. If we continue in our development towards the Vision 2030, inshallah, I think still on a highly need for expat here, not the working class expat, maybe. We need more people like Dr. Zaid, like people who are contributing to the local communities by teaching, by managing, by leading some organizations, and people who are here to contribute, not just to collect and go back or collect and send money. Any economy will try their best to keep the cash inside the country. And I'm sure that the government has heaps of plans to keep those highly qualified expat spending their money inside the country, and also staying here, or maybe plan their future to be citizens or permanent residents, not just having iqama to be renewed every year.
Well, thank you, Thamer. And I think attendees and the audience must make a note of it that near future structural change is on the way at Saudi Arabia. If you are looking at it, just check out for your abilities and skills. That's very important and vital.
What they mean by structural change?
Actually, there is one question, maybe if you allow just to present it, because Dr. Khalid, Dr. Thamer, myself, we are in the marketing field, and there is a marketing related question on my mobile from one of the participants. She is an assistant professor.
Sure.
So, she is asking how to retain customer in this crisis and work on employer branding. This is her question, that how can we retain the customer, retain customer and employer branding. Can we do something in this crisis?
This needs a discussion by itself.
Yes, please.
Maybe Dr. Khalid is better.
Well, I leave it to Dr. Tamer then, because you started already. It needs a big discussion. But for me, I don't see the difference. Branding is already branding, whether it was in virtual space or physical space. So they are using the digital world already, and the consumer, the whole idea of branding is coming through the connection and the link between the consumer and the product itself. So the product is still there and the consumer is still there. I don't see a change.
Actually, what I suggested, I wrote a small article on this, just for my own sake. What I was suggesting, that big companies, see, presently if we just want to correlate across the globe, people are on the basics now, basics. So they are not going to buy in the near future. Most likely, they will not be buying because they have lost their purchasing power. And otherwise, also, if they have money, they will keep it for future. So they will be focusing more on buying the basics. In this case, the companies, the brands, what they need to do is they need to keep in touch with their customers through, let's say, social marketing, connecting themselves that yes, we are there with you in this hard time. Whatever is needed, we are going to be with you, stand up with you, so that when the time comes, they come back to their old brands, inshallah. This is what I suggest. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. We have to close. I mean, I really wish that it could have gone longer, but time is running out. Thank you all the panelists. I'm deeply indebted to Khalid Abdullah and Thamer for sparing their time. And of course, I have a right on Dr. Zad, who had been my student. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.